All right, so
Michelle?
Michelle,
Yeah,
Michelle.
I was that close, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's pretty close. I'm used to it though. So I know it's Thursday afternoon, and I've got the challenge of keeping you guys awake. On the other hand, I know about the clicker. So so with that, who am I? You can read my bio, and you'll find out that most of my career I've been managing operations in paper mills. But I'm the father of two wonderful humans, so this is all about humans, right? I'm also the caretaker for another great human, and I'm a runner and coach of humans. I also am partner with a unique and wonderful human sitting in here in the room. And now this picture we took on Saturday, anybody know where this is? That's a safe guess. It's a very safe guess. So this is one of the views off of Pikes Peak as we were going up. And I want to tell you a little story about this because it's pretty interesting. So this is a gate at Pikes Peak on the highway. And there's this lady here that's talking to somebody in the car. Anybody know what she's doing? Checking brakes. So there she is, checking the temperature of the brakes. Now, why is that important? So here they actually have a norm for that. Safety brake check. Use lower gear. Temperature should not exceed 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, so they tell you that when you go up, when you're coming down, use the lower gear. Well, yeah, right. So you get into lower gear, start going down, you realize you can only go 20 miles an hour. That's pretty darn boring. But then when she checks my brakes, she asked me, how hot do you think they are? I said, I don't know. I've been going pretty slow. So they're probably like 200. Well, no, they were up there 250. So I asked this lady who did not give me her name, but she was very kind to allow me to take a picture. So how many people actually lost their brakes last year? She says, we only lost 4. We only crashed 4. And hopefully we're not going to crash any this year. Well, I thought that was a pretty neat way of verifying or preventing errors and making something obvious that is absolutely not obvious on our vehicles. What do you think? By the way, I strongly encourage you to go up Pikes Peak. It's absolutely beautiful. Sickness at height, sickness in altitude is a real thing, as I discovered. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about Domtar. We are a paper manufacturing company, and we make products that people rely on every day. I would like to thank all of you for using our stuff. If it's not ours, it's from one of our competitors who make pretty awesome stuff too. So we make mainly uncoated free sheet, and that is white paper. We also manufacture paper grade, fluff, and specialty pulps. And we're soon to start up a packaging machine. And once again, thanks to all you guys ordering stuff on Amazon, we're probably going to be very profitable doing that as well. More recently, we were just purchased by a company called Paper Excellence, based in Western Canada. So we're now part of their company. So you won't find us on the stock market, but we still operate as Domtar. We have 11 pulp paper packaging facilities across North America and 9 converting sites. Our head office is based in South Carolina and also in Montreal, Quebec, where closer to where my home is. We are big preachers of sustainability. So 70% reduction in our energy use, 68% reduction in our reportable events since the existence of this version of Domtar, and many other sustainability statistics. We have roughly 6,100 employees worldwide, clearly mainly in North America. And when we talk about sustainability, one of the things that we tie this to is the health and the safety of our colleagues and our communities. So that's a few facts about Domtar. Mission, vision, values, something usually very important to look at when you want to understand what a company is thinking. So our vision is to produce fiber-based products. So we have access to all this wood, and we want to do really neat stuff with it. In our values, some of the two things that are really relevant to this conference, so we want to be caring, and we also want to be innovative. So for us, innovation came in the form of discovering human performance. We are a heavy industry type of environment. So this is a picture of one of my favorite paper machines. These are really big pieces of equipment. We've got folks working in control rooms. We've got maintenance folks out on the floor. Out in our lumber yard, we're operating big machinery. So it gives you kind of an idea of what it is. So what got us into HP? On the safety side, we were plateauing on our safety performance around the year 2013. We had 2 fatalities. Yes, this is an interesting clicker. We had 2 fatalities in 2015, 2017, which really shook the organization. And also, we're looking very much into how can we control SIF potential. On the corporate side, if we look at our context, so very siloed approach to safety, environment, quality, and so on. Everybody had a different way to do things, and that would drive me nuts. So I was operations superintendent on the machine. Safety guy would come up to me when something safety happened and said, well, okay, we're going to look at this. We're going to do an investigation. This is how it's going to work. Then we'd kill a few fish. Somebody from environment would come and see me and say, okay, we're going to do our investigation, but we have our own form and we have our own way of doing things. And we don't call this an investigation. It's something else. Anyway, so, and then the reliability folks had some other crazy idea of what, how to look at failure. So very siloed. Nobody had a standard way of looking at things. Unplanned bad events just keep on happening. That's the way it is. And very decentralized structure. So a bunch of mills that were eventually amalgamated together in this company with very different ways, different cultures. And then the intent the corporation had at that time, we want to go to a one Domtar process. So I'll start and talk to you about training, awareness and training, and how we got into human performance. And it all starts with this gentleman. Shane Bush gave a presentation at PPSA, Pulp and Paper Safety Association, has a conference every year that's actually happening, I believe, this week, which is why I'm the only guy from Domtar here. So they said, hey, Michelle can do this. And in the years following that, found this approach very interesting. So we hired Shane to come and give some training and show us around. So we ended up with more than 500 people trained as a HPI practitioner throughout the company. Now, when I went through my training, my biggest question when I went out of there is, wow, this is pretty darn cool, but what do I do with it? How can I use this? So we were kind of missing that. There was that missing link on how do we get and make this operational. Now, with my luck, my boss said to me, hey, Michelle, you look like a smart dude. How about you go out and figure this out, how we're going to make this operational? So we ended up writing an investigation handbook and creating some training, which we gave all around the organization. How do we use this HPI thing? How do we make it operational? And then later, a couple of years later, we started doing leadership training, and we started integrating HPI concept in our leadership training. Now, there's a bit of a gap in time, and you'll guess that there was 2 years there where lots of stuff just didn't happen. But last year, I started working with the continuous improvement folks because I've always felt that continuous improvement, investigations, error reduction, I mean, there's so much stuff in common there. So why don't we try and pool our resources, because I'm just one and there's maybe 10% of my time used to do this. So why don't I try and reel them in and we create some kind of a unique process and bring all these concepts together. So we're working on that. Our training is really based on, first of all, we've got our senior leadership that's been, very much exposed to HPI concepts, that we've been through a lot of hardships. So we have senior leadership that believes, that supports, and that uses HPI concepts. We want to introduce new people to the philosophy. So we have a human performance improvement practitioner training that we still cater out with Shane from time to time. Problem-solving training, which is what I used to call investigations. So really that's the reactive side of things. And on the proactive tools, we have kind of two branches of how we get people knowledgeable there. So we have our leadership skills, so our program called Growing Leaders, as well as our audit program. And really what we're trying to do here is break the silos. So I talked about that, have a common language. And then, recognizing that regardless of what the outcome is, if somebody got hurt, if we killed some fish, or if we broke down a piece of machine, and the common thread there is we've got humans behind that, we've got human error going on, so we can look at that with the same lens. So we looked at having common investigation and proactive tools, choosing the right tool for analyzing the problem. So if you've got a technical problem, a machine broke down, well, you're going to go down cause analysis. If you've got human error, then you've got HPI analysis tools that can help you there. And we're bringing together, work groups like operations, maintenance, services. So I've done investigations on IT stuff, on engineering projects, and so on. And then bringing all our business objectives to use these common tools. So when we look at training, what do we learn? And what are problems we're facing? So the first thing I wrote up there is dealing with turnover. And especially with the last 2 years we've been through, we've shut down facilities. We've expanded some facilities. We've hired a lot of people. We've retired a lot of people. So how do we get to reach new employees and make sure that they are brought into the fold and understand what we're trying to do here? Also trying to keep a centralized feel with a very decentralized organization. I put the tree up there of the different acquisitions that created the Domtar that we are today. And with the Paper Excellence acquisition, I could probably add another branch there. And then what I find personally very important is getting all these different functional teams, working with them at the point they're at. So the safety group, always leading the path in these types of initiatives. Quality folks were very, very interested and went right in, environment folks as well. Reliability folks, it's a bit of a world of their own and a little bit more of a struggle to bring them on. So they don't all start at the same level, so you have to adapt and get there. And then finally, dealing with remote work. So I've been giving training for years and years, going into classrooms, meeting students. So how do you do that remotely? It's a big learning thing. All right. Second chapter of what I want to talk about in our journey is investigations. So throughout the last 3 days, I've heard investigations is a bit of a naughty word. But it was there in my slides. I didn't really feel like changing it, but we'll call it problem solving. How's that? Does that sound fair? So we started out in 2007 when we had the merger with which brought on the Domtar that we know right now. We had a book called the Domtar Incident Investigation Manual, which was really about safety and environment. And in 2013, obviously we met, we had our first contact with HPI. And so then we decided to produce our first version of the new investigation process. And we came out with version number 9 in 2018. I'm actually tasked to create version number 10, but then I got sidetracked on the various things. But that's where we're at. So we evolved from something that was very narrow to something that is really a process that allows us to investigate pretty much any type of event. What does it look like? So we really inspired ourselves to begin with the DOE Handbook on Investigations, which is Accident and Operational Safety Analysis. I don't know if the authors are in the room. I wouldn't be surprised. But basically with 4 big steps. So finding out what happened, and then analyzing that into the why, identifying your causes, your causal factors, and implementing corrective actions. And I won't get into too much detail here. If you're interested in the process, I certainly can share that with you, but there's different tools used throughout the steps that we teach in the investigation class, and to bring us all the way to getting corrective actions, making smart corrective actions, and making them actually smarter with effectiveness reviews. And the whole idea of the process here is you've got your worker with his context, with his error precursors, with his performance mode, that somehow something he does, a decision he takes, a mistake he makes, an error he makes, goes through all our barriers, and we end up with an unwanted outcome. So we go looking for the facts, trying to understand from his perspective, the tunnel view, and using all of our investigation tools, we come up with some corrective actions, and we try and focus on the system problems, and therefore we end up most of the time working on shoring up what our defenses are, shoring up our barriers. We also had to tackle with a little bit, what's the difference between Shane coming in and giving us the practitioner training versus investigator. And really, the practitioner is really a lot around the philosophy, the leadership, whereas the investigator is the how-to. What's the process? What are the tools? How do I actually get from point A to coming out with corrective actions? We created a certification process, so bronze, silver, gold. And the intent of bronze is really one of the things I find the most difficult, and I don't know who here is leads operations or maybe safety folks, you see that, but something happens on Saturday night at 2 in the morning. And you hear about it on Monday morning, but you've got no pictures, you don't know who to talk to, there's really no details on what happened. So what we try to do is take our frontline leaders and teach them, these are the essential things you need to do when an event happens. So of course, first thing you want to do is manage the event. So, if somebody's bleeding or if something's spilling or the machine's down, you need to deal with that first. But then after that, how do you capture critical information so that it doesn't go lost? So take a picture. That's lesson number 1, take a picture. We all have phones, we buy cameras for our supervisors, so take a picture. And then talk to your critical witnesses and make sure you capture what they tell you so that you have the beginning of a story. So on Monday morning, me as an operations superintendent, I don't come in like, geez, I'm gonna have to talk to Bob, and he's coming in on Thursday night shift. So maybe by Friday morning, I'll have a little bit of information. So that's what we're trying to do with the bronze. The silver is really the investigator that's going to dig into the stuff and try and understand and come up with some causal factors and some corrective actions. And finally, the gold level is the experienced problem solver. Caught myself there. The experienced problem solver who has done many of these activities and is able to act as a peer reviewer and as an internal trainer as well. And these folks could be called upon for major events. So that's happened to me a couple of times. We've had a major breakdown, and it's always the same place that calls me. I don't know why. They obviously like me. But most of my experience has been investigating on breakdowns, environmental stuff. Haven't very much been involved on the safety side, but this is what happens. So we call in our gold problem solvers. How we've set up our strategy in terms of the application of HPI. So really what we're trying to do is we want to have, and this is an illustration, by the way, of the blunt end of the stick and the pointy end of the stick. Just trying to make that clear. So our managers that are at the blunt end are really responsible for that, the management defenses and so on. So we want them to understand what HPI is all about. We want to certify them as investigators. We want to give them all the tools to understand, hey, you guys are the ones that are making this culture, that are making these rules or these SOPs. So you are responsible for at least that 70%, you know, that 70-30% rule. And as we go up the chain, we have our supervisors. So we want them to be able to capture the basic data. And finally, on the worker side, well, this is where the errors are more likely to happen because, of course, they're touching the process. So this is where we want those HPI tools, the error reduction tools, to be understood and used, implemented. So what's new in 2022 is the Domtar problem-solving process. I've just recently been through my black belt certification. So black belt Lean Six Sigma. Just wanted that to be clear. Okay, I don't do kung fu or anything, but I can kick data butt. So in continuous improvement, there's a process. And when you're doing problem solving, you're trying to understand a past event, there's a process. So if really you want to define what your problem is, you want to understand, so capture all the data. Then you want to analyze, or you can use some analysis tools. So CI folks are really in love with 5 whys, right? So that's an awesome tool, 5 whys. It's got its value. We've talked about it this week. There's limits to it, but when you're faced with a human error, well, with HPI, we learn all these other analysis tools that allow us to understand human error and come to a resolution. And then we have the improve processes where we take our causes that we have identified and think of solutions. And finally, the step that was missing maybe in our original process, and that's the sustain. How do we make sure to keep our solution in place and not have it drift away, like Ron would say? So if we look at our lessons learned for investigations, I think one of our biggest mistakes, and I mean, it was a learner's mistake, so it was tying HPI in investigations. It's so strong that sometimes an event happens and people say, oh, we'll do an HPI. Well, and I keep on correcting folks, because really what we're going to do is we're going to resolve this problem. And if we happen to find human error in our sequence of events, then we're going to go and use our HPI analysis tools. So very difficult to backtrack once you start selling it that way. We trained something like 250 silver investigators. And I think the biggest lesson learned there is 250 people that do problem solving and that produce reports, produce corrective actions. If you want a quality check, you need to have more than just me as a peer reviewer. So you need to have a bunch of peer reviewers to know how to do this stuff and to help you make sure that it's done well. I found that sites are struggling with fact finding. So that bronze training, very important. And also using the analysis tools. So peer reviews are really important. And the fact that we're trying to apply this not only to safety, but to environment, to quality, to reliability problems, we're making this is the process we use. We use it more often. Because we use it more often, we become better at it because we practice. And I think that integrating this with CI is just going to make it even more common practice. The other thing is, I mean, you can make these things ridiculously big. You can spend 80 hours on a small problem. So you got to make sure when you get into it, you know, how big is this problem? How risk prone is this problem? How likely is it to cause a disaster? Because I'm going to apply the level of analysis that is required. So not everything needs an 80-hour investigation. If you can get it over in 4 hours, well, you need to have some kind of a streamlined process. And I've got a few statistics there on the number of investigations we've conducted that use HPI analysis tools. And you'll see we went through a kind of a hump increased number in 2017, 2018. And really what we discovered at that point is some mills had decided we are going to do HPI analysis on everything. So I had one mill that had, I think, 50 or 60 investigations using HPI analysis tools. They had shown their supervisors how to use the software, and they were just clicking wherever they thought was relevant after a 4-hour training. So got to be watchful for that. But, you know, we're looking at, you know, maybe 80 situations where we're going to be analyzing using HPI tools every year. And that seems to be a sustainable rate. Okay, moving on to proactive tools. Two initiatives came together. So first of all, I talked about the Growing Leaders program. So that was really started for frontline supervisors, but ended up being for most of our leaders. And it's around different concepts in leadership. And we decided, hey, wouldn't it be sweet to integrate a little bit of HPI training, you know, spoon feed it for every module. So we did that. The other thing that was coming around at the same time is the daily management system, because with continuous improvement, we figured, well, wouldn't it be great if we started our production day every day the same way by asking ourselves, how can we make this day a good day? And putting all kinds of structure around that. And this was allowing us to have level 1, so floor level interaction, level 2, middle management, and upper management at the plant, having kind of a structured conversation about how the day is going to go, what happened yesterday, and so on. And with the Growing Leaders program, so we started introducing HPI tools piecemeal, one at a time, with examples, with ideas how to do these different things. So this is just an illustration of the tools that we did include in some of the modules that we put together for Growing Leaders. As you can see, we developed our own marketing, so little images and so on. And I want to show you here a little video we did for one of the modules.
This morning at the rep line, Paul, the night shift operator, was showing Greg his replacement of roll that had fallen on his side. He not had time to deal with it. Now Greg has to figure out a way to fix this. And that's me. My name is Rick, and I'm the supervisor of this crew today. No time for iron talk, because we had trial on the rep line this morning and we're running late. I'm on my way to talk to Sue, who's the lead operator, and check on the specs for this new wrapper. Clearly, I have no idea what's going to hit me later today.
Was it great this morning?
Same old, still running around like a chicken with its leg off. Did you get the specs for the new wrapper? When are you changing? How fast is it running? Is it off?
Wow, boss. Warmed up this morning? Okay, don't worry. I got it under control. And here are the specs. Right here. And I have a fresh batch of coffee.
Oh, exactly what I needed. Thanks. Heard from the night shift supervisor, we had a breakdown on the pattern machine.
Just good thing I heard about that. I replaced Guthrie this morning, he didn't say much. And there's nothing on the night shift floor either.
No news is good news, I guess. No give with the truck?
You know you can trust me. Sue is on top of it. Okay, have a nice day.
And there I am running off again to the next one. This time, Chuck has a quality issue that he found on models produced from the night shift.
What's up?
See if that piece of line is up. All I gotta do to all of it.
Night shift is Tina?
What talk about it? How do I?
I don't know.
It's great stuff. I can't get it on. Come quick, guys.
Go.
things go so wrong today? Why did I get the feeling I never had control? Why didn't I stop it? Right. Thank goodness he's going to be all right. We've got to change the way we start our shifts.
All right, thank you. So we created these little videos to kind of illustrate our point. And what I like about this is we really went into our own context, something that folks on the floor, supervisors could relate to. So this supervisor was me. I mean, I was a ship supervisor like that, running around with his head like a chicken cut off or whatever. It's Thursday afternoon. So there's actually a second video where we show Rick running a daily management system meeting. And here we introduced turnover meeting as a HPI tool, three-way communication, debriefing. So throughout all these exercises, we introduced these HPI tools. And plus we made these really cool videos, and I would like to thank corporate for their financing. The other aspect of proactive tools I wanted to talk about real quick, internal audits. So we have pretty much for everything, we have some kind of a way of measuring how well are we doing in a proactive way. In particular, I wanted to talk about two types of safety audits. One we call verification audits. So for example, in our SIF program, we're defining, what do we expect to see when we have a line breaking? What do we expect to see when we have lifting and rigging? And we've created this one Domtar view of what good looks like, let's say for lifting and rigging. So a verification audit is we take our lifting and rigging process and we ask each individual site to go and look at their process and see how well does it conform to our policy or our corporate process. So that's verification audits. And out of that, we generate some learnings and generate some actions. Show me audits are also really cool because what we're looking for, and I don't know if Ron's still in the room, but what we're looking for is drift. So we take out an SOP, let's say changing the knives on a winder. We take out that SOP and we go on the floor and we observe how work is done. And then we start looking for differences with that and the SOP. And we learn, well, do we have drift? We try and observe drift. And if drift is there, we try and understand it. Maybe these guys found a better way to do it. Maybe we need to upgrade our SOP. Maybe, there's been drift in behavior and we need to course correct. So that's another pretty cool way of finding out if there's drift. All right, some lessons learned around proactive tools. It's difficult to have consistency if we don't have a standardized approach. It's very difficult to measure the use of proactive tools, even though here in the graph below here, we tried to do that. It's very difficult to capture that measurement from the field. We are still struggling to get this to the frontline worker. So of course, we've trained our supervisors, but actually implementing this on the floor and getting feedback for that is a bit of a challenge. And some of our sites are better at it than others. Making the DMS, the daily management system, systematic at the front line. Once again, the frontline issue. We feel we have a pretty good audit process, but we need to improve our follow-up on findings. Okay, next subject, data collection and analysis. So I was involved in this quite a bit. So there's three states of minds, the way we see the world. So first of all, there's the reactive circle of despair, and that's the firefighting mode. And I lived a lot of my production life in that mode. In fact, there's actually the ring of fire around that. That's when it's absolutely irrecoverable disaster. And then we have the continuous improvement, or where you would like to live when you're in operation. So plan, do, check, act. And I've got the DMS in there. That's kind of our tool to stay there. And finally, some folks are lucky enough that they live in this little green circle that we call HPO in our language. So that's HRO. We felt reliability was a little bit too much tied to maintenance, so we changed that to high performance organization. That's where you look at, you're always looking forward, always looking at how well you're doing, and you're in control. That's where accountants live. Well, that's where you hope your accountants live. So if you put all this together, you get the three circles, one inside each other. So if you, to get out of the reactive circle of despair, well, you're gonna have to figure out what happened, implement some solutions, and lead with the why and get back into that circle of continuous improvement. And if you're really good and you're proactive, you get into the proactive circle in the middle. But if you fail to act, you fail to implement the things that you discovered, you run right back into the circle of despair. So I'm saying this because we created our own software to capture data, which is based on these three different families of activities. So investigations, continuous improvement, and audits. So it's a database we built with our own interface, and it's called MILCAT. So the cat is actually corrective action tracking. It's not the feline. But the hero here is a cougar, because one of our flagship products is a paper called Cougar. And we use software, data integration system called Tableau to create some nice visualizations. So for instance, we adopted the DOE causal analysis tree, or I think it's INPO causal analysis tree. And when we do our investigations, then we can classify our causal factors. And that gives us a little bit of a portrait of what's highlighted in all of our investigations. Where are we the most, where are our shortcomings? So what comes out the most is management methods less than adequate. So that's pretty confronting. But it allows us to build all these statistics. Now, in my lessons learned for data collection, so centralized data collection system we feel is essential. Users are looking for a one-stop shop. You don't want to have an environment list of corrective action, a safety list, and then a quality list and a reliability list. You want to have, if you're at least like me, operations, you want to have one place to go. It was a big challenge to develop this in-house. We spent quite a bit of money. It's been a 7-year journey now, and we are in the process of moving to a commercial system this year. The other thing is, because we're a very decentralized organization, getting consistency from all the sites was a bit challenging. And it's very important that we integrate this in our DMS process so that the feedback loop starts and we can use it as a tool. And here I've got an example of how many corrective actions we created out of investigations over the years. Very short section on work organization. So HPI practitioners, they're responsible for deploying HPI and supporting the philosophy at each site. Each of our mills has at least one practitioner. Often it's the safety specialist. Most of them are gold level investigators. The challenge is turnover and retirements. And we do need to build HPI concepts within the onboarding. So some mills have done that. Some mills are still in the process of doing that. And then we have the corporate HPI specialist, which is yours truly. The investigation training program, data system management, which I was in charge of. The challenge is I'm not a dedicated resource. So there's maybe 10–15% of my time that is dedicated to this now. And so by integrating with CI, I'm hoping that I'm going to multiply these resources by at least 3. So let me wrap up, and I'll give you a chance to ask a few questions. Our challenges, Domtar's challenges in the human performance world. So first of all is consistent application of HPI proactive tools on the shop floor. And I mentioned that in my proactive tools. We want to get there. We really started our HP journey by looking at understanding past events, investigations. And we recognize that that's really only a portion of how we can get better with human performance. So applying these proactive tools, this is something that we're working on. Sustaining the HPI philosophy through turnover. So clearly with COVID, with plants going down and all that, that's been a challenge, and we're still working through that. Keeping the standard process standard in a very decentralized environment. Because, you know, once you've given the training, and with the minute corporate team we have, there's nothing stopping from one site doing their own thing and drifting on off into one direction. So that's a challenge for us. And then the other thing is accepting to focus on specific types of events. So the idea of looking at SIF potential events really strays away from at least my habit of 26 years in operation, where, you know, every event needs to be investigated. Well, we need to accept to maybe put a little bit less energy on some types of events, because really what we're interested in, what is going to put somebody in the ER or in the morgue, as somebody said yesterday. And then looking at increasing the reporting in several of our locations. We recognize that in several of our locations, we're just not hearing about what's going on. Hey, they've only had like 2 first aids and 3 near misses in the last year. Yeah, right. They're just not talking about it. And thank you for Lauren for sharing her elephant. Silence is the elephant on the road blocking any HRO journey, and I really believe that. I was in one of our plants in Arkansas, say close to 2 months ago, and 4 out of 5 events that I looked at, there was a reporting issue. And most of the time, issues or events are reported because you don't have much of a choice. There's a broken limb or something's crashed on the floor, or, you know, that's not self-reporting. Let's celebrate some successes. As my friend Frank, I don't know where you're sitting there, said, you know, sometimes it's good to look downhill and see what we've actually accomplished. And since I've been to Pikes Peak, looking downhill is now new nature. So we've got HPI integrated in most of our key business processes in manufacturing. We own the philosophy. We've got you know, a lot of people talking the same vocabulary, and we've got that single investigation process. We've done extensive training of middle management on the philosophy and on application. We have HPI advocates in most plants, and that's where I'm saying the turnover is a challenge. And there's definitely a visible evolution towards a more just culture. And I have a very personal invested interest in just culture, because I went through a few situations where I was forced by management to put discipline where I was uncomfortable with implementing that discipline, and created very distorted and shut down cultures. So I'm a big believer of working on improving our culture to become more of a just culture. And integrated data collection tool, very important. And finally, you know, we've seen some measurable improvements in our safety performance. Got a graph here, and I love it. You know, there's absolutely no y-axis. That's the way they love them. But good improvements on lost time frequency rate, lost time severity rate, moderate improvement on our SIFs. But, you know, we're making some progress, so that's pretty good. I've got 3 lessons learned I want to share with you. So first of all, we're going to make this happen. HPI philosophy must be lived and supported from the top down. So this morning, Mr. Fisher was talking about the different cogs and how it's, you know, if you can't get your leadership on board, you know, don't move on. And I think that's really important, because I've seen plants that actually what they did is they say, hey, this is so great. We're going to train our whole plant. So they train 300 people on human error, on error precursors, on performance modes, on just culture. You train a bunch of folks that are all union workers on just culture. And then 2 years later, all those leaders are gone. They've been promoted somewhere else or whatever. And who remembers that training? The workers on the floor. And you've told them just culture. bunch of new leaders come in and they think, oh, golden rule is the awesome thing. So how much credibility have you built? You've just lost everything. And what I find, and I think you'll probably agree with me, the biggest struggle is for leaders that have been in place for a long time, it's getting them to get the concept of blame fixes nothing. Break silos, increase adherence by spreading to all the business aspects. I firmly believe if this is just a safety thing, it's going to be a struggle. And then finally, internalize the philosophy. A lot of folks have talked about soak time. Take the time to make this your own. Create your own internal branding and develop your own material. And especially with these videos where we used real practical work visuals of what our folks actually do. If I took videos of people cutting trees, it likely would not resonate with the Domtar folks. So with that, thank you very much for being here on this beautiful Thursday afternoon. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.